A 12-year-old girl secretly enters a tech company to stave off hunger. Instead of food, she finds a whiteboard with complex formulas and decides to correct them. Hours later, she saves a $5.4 million project with her notes. Now everyone wants to find out who the child is that changed the company's fate. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. Let's continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. The rain showed no signs of letting up in New York City on that July night. While executives and employees rushed to their cars in the parking lot of Neotech America's imposing building, a small silhouette took advantage of the general distraction to slip through the service door. Lucy Oliver, 12, with curly hair and expressive eyes, carried a worn backpack containing her only belongings: 2 notebooks full of mathematical notes, a book on algorithms found in university trash, and a change of clothes. Lucy's stomach growled. She hadn't eaten anything for almost an entire day, except for a few crackers donated by a woman on Fifth Avenue. After fleeing the Renaissance Institute, an east side of New York City orphanage known for neglect and abuse, Lucy wandered between public libraries during the day and sheltered under awnings at night. In almost 5 months on the streets, she had developed a special talent for going unnoticed. The New York Public Library main branch in Midtown had become her private refuge. There, among books on advanced mathematics, physics, and computer science, the girl fed her curious mind. With an extraordinary ability to absorb complex content, Lucy had taught herself linear algebra, differential calculus, and in recent months had delved into the fascinating world of neural networks and artificial intelligence. There must be something left from the coffee break, she whispered to herself as she cautiously walked through the empty corridors of Neotech's 14th floor, a leading technology company in the country. Lucy had studied the building's movements for days. She knew that on Fridays, meetings often ended late and always served a generous snack. She also knew that the security system had a 5-minute interval between rounds on the executive floor. That was all she needed to get in, eat something, and leave unnoticed. As she passed a meeting room with the door ajar, something caught her attention: a huge whiteboard covered in equations, diagrams, and notes in various colors. Even from a distance, she recognized them immediately. They were equations related to a deep neural network model, similar to those she studied in her borrowed books. But there was something strange about the formulas. Hunger was momentarily forgotten. Lucy entered the room, hypnotized by the mathematical symbols. She approached the whiteboard, analyzing each line with growing perplexity. She picked up one of the markers and began to make small corrections, almost instinctively. "Here, the activation function is wrong," she murmured, "and this weight matrix needs to be normalized differently." On the room's table, a monitor still on showed an open presentation with the title, "Project Antares, Saving Our Artificial Intelligence." A subtitle revealed the scale of the problem: Development Crisis, Deadline 30 Days, Investment Committed $27 million. The complexity of the challenge only increased the girl's interest. Completely absorbed, Lucy lost track of time. Hours passed as she corrected functions, redesigned the model's architecture, refactored backpropagation algorithms, and optimized the data processing pipeline. Crackers found on a tray were her only sustenance while she worked. When the clock struck 3:47 a.m., the whiteboard was completely transformed. What was once a confusing tangle of equations had become an elegant and harmonious solution. Lucy stepped back, contemplating her work with the satisfaction of someone who had just assembled a particularly difficult puzzle. "Now it's right," she murmured with a small smile. "It should work." The distant sound of the elevator brought her back to reality. It was time to leave. She grabbed her backpack, ate the last available sandwich, and headed for the emergency stairs, leaving behind only the result of hours of intense work on the whiteboard and a few crumbs on the table. As she hurried down the stairs, she had no idea of the impact her corrections would have the next morning. The day had barely dawned when Felicity Miller, CEO of Neotech America, and Richard Thorne, Chief Technology Officer, entered the meeting room. Both carried expressions of defeat after weeks of trying to save Project Antares, an ambitious AI system that had consumed millions in investment and was on the verge of failure. The presentation to investors was scheduled for 2 weeks later, and the system continued to show critical flaws. We'll have to start from scratch, Richard. There's no other way, Felicity said, placing her briefcases on the table. We need to wait. What happened to the whiteboard? The two executives stopped astonished before the whiteboard. The equations they had left the night before, the result of months of frustrated attempts by the team, had been completely reorganized into a structure neither of them recognized at first glance. Who did this? Richard asked, approaching the whiteboard with wide eyes. This isn't what we left here yesterday. It looks like a completely different architecture, Felicity replied, growing more and more perplexed as she analyzed the equations. Richard, could this work? The CTO studied the notes for long minutes, his expression gradually shifting from confusion to admiration. It's brilliant, he finally murmured. It's an approach we never considered. Look how the cost function has been redefined and how the network architecture has been simplified while maintaining processing depth. Whoever did this understands AI at a level that, frankly, makes me ashamed for not having thought of it before. We need to test it immediately. Felicity picked up the phone. I'll call the team right now. And I also want the security camera footage. We need to find out who our mysterious savior is. 2 hours later, the room was filled with engineers and data scientists, all silent as they watched the computer screens. The revised model was running in a high-fidelity simulation. The results began to appear, eliciting gasps of astonishment. 97.8% accuracy, latency reduced by 62%, energy efficiency increased by 78%, one of the engineers read, barely able to believe the numbers he was seeing. This isn't just an improvement. It's a revolution in the model. Richard, who was reviewing the security footage on his tablet, suddenly paled. Felicity, you need to see this. On the screen, the night image clearly showed a girl, apparently very young, working intently on the whiteboard for hours. A child? Felicity approached, incredulous. A child solved the problem our entire team couldn't solve in months. According to the videos, she entered shortly after 10 at night and left almost at 4 in the morning, Richard informed. She seemed to know exactly what she was doing. Felicity watched the recording for a few more minutes, observing the ease with which the girl manipulated complex equations, as if she were simply writing her own name. We need to find her, she decided, standing up. Whoever she is, this girl cannot simply disappear. For 3 days, Neotech security personnel scoured the vicinity of the building without success. Following Felicity's instructions, they avoided contacting authorities. The situation was too delicate to attract external attention. Meanwhile, the technical team implemented the changes proposed by the mysterious visitor, marveling at each new, successful test. I don't understand how we didn't think of this before, commented Deborah Mason, head of the engineering team, analyzing the results. It's as if we had a diamond in our hands without knowing how to cut it, and suddenly someone appeared and showed us exactly where to cut. Sitting across the table, Raphael Carter, an artificial intelligence specialist with several international awards and a senior consultant for the project, maintained a reserved expression. He did not share the general enthusiasm. Are we really believing that a child solved a problem that challenged PhDs for months? He questioned, adjusting his glasses impatiently. There must be a more plausible explanation. Felicity, who had just entered the room, overheard the comment. The cameras don't lie, Raphael, she replied, placing her laptop on the table, and neither do the results. The question now is to find her. I have an idea, Richard intervened. If she's so brilliant at math, she must frequent libraries. Let's start with those closest to the building. The suggestion proved accurate. On the afternoon of the 4th day, after visiting several municipal libraries, Felicity finally spotted her. Lucy was absorbed in a voluminous book on deep learning, sitting alone at a back table in the New York Public Library, main branch in Midtown. Felicity hesitated, watching her from a distance. The girl wore worn but clean clothes, her hair tied in a makeshift ponytail, and made meticulous notes in a notebook. Despite her apparent physical fragility, there was an intensity in her concentration that was impressive. Approaching slowly so as not to startle her, Felicity sat in the opposite chair. Lucy looked up, immediately alert. Her tense body betrayed years of self-preservation instinct. "Hello," Felicity said in a calm voice. "My name is Felicity Miller. I believe you visited my company recently." The girl's eyes widened slightly, but she did not answer. Her fingers tightened their grip on the pencil. "I'm not here to cause problems," Felicity continued. "In fact, I came to thank you. You solved a problem that was driving our entire team crazy." Lucy remained silent, assessing the situation. Her eyes, however, had a spark of curiosity. "May I ask your name?" Felicity tried again. After a few seconds that seemed like an eternity, the girl finally spoke. "Lucy," she replied in a low but firm voice. "Lucy Oliver. Nice to meet you, Lucy. You have an extraordinary talent for mathematics and artificial intelligence. Where did you learn all this?" The girl shrugged, a gesture that tried to minimize her own accomplishments. "In books. Here, mostly." She pointed to the surrounding shelves. "When you understand the basics of mathematics, the rest is a logical consequence." Felicity smiled, impressed by the simple yet profound answer. "And where do you live, Lucy? Do your parents know you were at Neotech at that time of night?" The girl visibly tensed, closing the book. "I don't have parents," she replied dryly, "and I didn't do anything wrong. I just corrected some equations." Realizing she had touched a sensitive point, Felicity changed her approach. "Of course you didn't do anything wrong. In fact, you helped us immensely," she assured sincerely. "Our project was on the verge of failure, and your corrections saved it. Neotech would like to reciprocate." Lucy narrowed her eyes, suspicious. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity, Lucy. It's recognition for intellectual work." Felicity opened her briefcase and took out a business card. "Would you like to meet our team? See how your ideas are being implemented. Maybe even help us a little more." Scientific curiosity finally overcame the suspicion in the girl's eyes. She took the card, examining it carefully. "How do I know this isn't a trap?" Felicity respected that caution. For a child living on the streets, trusting adults was a dangerous luxury. "It's a fair question," she replied honestly. "I can't prove my intentions with words, but I can assure you it will be in a safe environment. In fact, if you prefer, we can contact Child Protective Services to accompany you." "Child Protective Services?" Lucy instinctively recoiled. "To send me back to the Institute?" "No, to ensure your rights," Felicity clarified, realizing the complex story behind that reaction. "Lucy, I don't know what happened to you, but I can see you're an extraordinary person. I don't want to harm you. Just offer an opportunity." The girl remained silent for almost a minute, pondering. The idea of seeing a technology company up close was tempting. Even more so, the possibility of working with real artificial intelligence, not just in theory. "Can I leave whenever I want?" she finally asked. "Absolutely," Felicity confirmed. "The door will always be open." Lucy put the card in her faded jeans pocket. "I'll think about it." "Great. We'll be waiting." Felicity stood up, but before walking away she added, "Oh, and Lucy, thank you again. You're truly impressive." The next morning, to the surprise of Neotech's receptionist, a simply dressed girl appeared in the lobby of the luxurious building, asking for Felicity Miller. Beside her, a middle-aged black woman with a kind expression introduced herself as Maria Sanchez, a social worker from the Municipal Department of Development. "I received a call from Dr. Miller last night," Maria explained to the receptionist. "She asked me to accompany Lucy on this visit." In a few minutes, Felicity appeared in person to greet them, her face lighting up at the sight of Lucy. "You came," she exclaimed with genuine enthusiasm, "and I see you're in good company." "I met Maria at the library," Lucy explained. "She's always been nice to me." Maria smiled. "I've known Lucy for a few months. She attends the educational programs I coordinate, but I've never been able to convince her to accept formal shelter," the social worker explained. "When she told me about your invitation, I thought it was important to come too. I hope you don't mind." "On the contrary, I'm relieved," Felicity replied sincerely. "The situation is unusual, and we want to do everything correctly. Shall we go up?" On the 14th floor, the same meeting room where everything had begun was now occupied by the core team of Project Antares. Everyone stood up when Felicity entered, accompanied by the visitors. "Everyone, this is Lucy Oliver," Felicity introduced, "the person who solved the Antares problem." The looks of surprise and disbelief did not go unnoticed by Lucy. She was already accustomed to being underestimated. Raphael Carter, the senior specialist, stepped forward, his expression oscillating between skepticism and curiosity. "So you're our mysterious nocturnal visitor," he said, studying her intently. I must admit, I expected someone different. People usually do, Lucy replied, holding his gaze without hesitation. Richard hastened to lighten the mood. We implemented your changes, Lucy, and the results are impressive. Would you like to see? The girl's eyes lit up. Can I really? In the following minutes, Richard showed how Lucy's proposed modifications had transformed the system's performance. The girl watched intently, occasionally asking technical questions that surprised even the most experienced engineers. Interesting, you adjusted the learning rate as I suggested, she commented, analyzing a screen of metrics. But I think it could be even more efficient if... Before she could finish, Raphael interrupted her. Do you really understand what you're seeing? Or are you just repeating terms you read somewhere? Maria was about to protest the hostility, but Lucy was faster. The tensor structure I implemented reorganizes the information flow in the neural network to minimize computational redundancies during backpropagation, she explained calmly. If you want, I can mathematically demonstrate why this works better than the traditional approach you were using. An astonished silence fell over the room. It was Felicity who finally broke it. I think that answers your question, Raphael, she said with a contained smile. And now how about we show Lucy where she can really help us? In the following 2 weeks, Neotech America's routine was completely transformed by Lucy's presence. After a series of meetings between Felicity, Maria, and the competent authorities, they secured a temporary arrangement. Lucy would officially be a junior consultant for Project Antares, receiving a scholarship while living in a supervised apartment near the company, with Maria as her temporary guardian. The paperwork was complex, involving everything from Child Protective Services documents to special authorizations for educational work for minors in vulnerable situations. But Felicity moved mountains to ensure everything was done legally. After all, Lucy was not just a child prodigy. She was a salvation for the company's most ambitious project. In the improvised workstation they set up for her, Lucy spent hours perfecting algorithms and rebuilding entire parts of the system. The initial barriers of mistrust gradually dissolved, with the exception of Raphael, who maintained a calculated distance. How do you visualize such complex structures without diagrams? Deborah asked one morning, observing Lucy work. The girl shrugged, continuing to type code without interruption. It's like listening to music. When you know the notes well, you can hear the melody even before it's played. In the next room, Felicity was talking with Richard and Maria about Lucy's future. She needs formal education, structured for her cognitive level, Maria argued. I've already contacted specialists in gifted education, but finding a suitable program for someone with such exceptional abilities is not simple. Neotech can fund private tutors, Felicity offered. We can put together a personalized curriculum that meets both academic requirements and her specific interests. Richard shook his head, thoughtfully. The most impressive thing is not just her understanding of mathematics, but her intuition for complex systems. She sees patterns that escape even our most experienced specialists. The preliminary psychological report indicates that Lucy developed this hyperfocus as a survival mechanism, Maria explained, flipping through a folder. When she fled the Renaissance Institute, immersing herself in mathematics and logic was her way of finding order in a chaotic world. Felicity sighed. I still can't believe what she suffered in that place. The complaints you forwarded to the district attorney's office are very serious. Unfortunately, it's not an isolated case, Maria replied bitterly, but we are focused on ensuring that Lucy's future is different. Upon returning to the main room, they found Lucy in a heated technical discussion with Raphael. The team watched the debate in respectful silence. Your model will fail in high-variance environments, Raphael insisted, pointing to the screen. The cost function you propose does not have enough robustness. You're analyzing it with the wrong paradigm, Lucy countered, undeterred. The architecture I implemented is adaptive. The higher the variance, the better it adjusts. That's theory. In practice, real systems don't work like that. Then let's test it, the girl challenged. Prepare the most difficult scenario you can imagine. If it fails, I'll reformulate everything. A small smile appeared on Raphael's face. I accept the challenge. Over the next few hours, Raphael configured a test environment with the maximum possible adversities for an AI system: noisy data, random interruptions, limited computational resources, contradictory requirements. It was the kind of test that would make most systems collapse. The entire team gathered to observe the results, many expecting to finally see a limit to the young prodigy's talent. The numbers began to appear on the screen. Efficiency at 92.7%, Richard announced, incredulous. In a chaotic environment like this, we would expect something around 50 to 60% at best. Raphael adjusted his glasses, his expression serious as he analyzed the data. Impressive, he finally admitted, looking at Lucy with new respect. You not only understand the theory, but you can apply it in ways that, well, that I hadn't considered. The girl didn't celebrate, just nodded. Now can we optimize the data ingestion pipeline? She asked, already turning her attention to the next challenge. I've identified some bottlenecks that are limiting processing speed. It was at that moment that the monitoring system triggered an alert. All eyes turned to the central monitor, where a warning flashed in red. Unauthorized access attempt detected, Deborah informed, quickly typing commands. Someone tried to inject code into the main repository. Richard approached, concerned. Where did the access come from? I'm tracing it, Deborah replied, her fingers flying across the keyboard. It seems it was internal, from within our network. A tense silence filled the room. Felicity crossed her arms. What exactly did they try to inject? I don't know yet. The system automatically blocked it, Deborah explained. I'll need time to analyze it. Lucy, who had been watching intently, stood up and approached the main monitor. Can I take a look? After a look of approval from Richard, Deborah yielded her seat. Lucy began to navigate the system logs with surprising familiarity. In a few minutes, her expression grew serious. It wasn't just an access attempt, she finally said. Someone inserted malicious code into the data validation module 3 days ago. It's programmed to activate during the investor demonstration. The revelation caused an alarmed murmur. How did that get past our security protocols? Felicity questioned. It was disguised as a routine update, Lucy explained. But the timestamp is inconsistent, and there's a trigger here that would only activate under specific conditions. What kind of damage would it cause? Richard asked. Progressive degradation, Lucy replied, still analyzing the code. The system would appear to function normally at first, but would begin to make increasingly serious errors, until it failed completely at the most critical moment of the demonstration. Raphael, who had remained silent, approached. I need to see this, he said with unusual urgency in his voice. Lucy stepped aside to give him space, carefully observing his reaction. For a fleeting moment, something akin to panic crossed the specialist's face. This is sophisticated, he commented, visibly disturbed. It seems like the work of someone who knows our system very well. Which means someone on the team, Felicity concluded, her tone icy. The atmosphere in the room grew even more tense. Richard took the initiative. We're going to remove this code immediately and reinforce all security protocols. Felicity, we need to investigate who had access to the repository in recent days. I'm already taking care of it, the CEO replied, picking up the phone, and I'm calling for a complete security audit. As the team mobilized to contain the crisis, Lucy remained quiet, observing the activity around her. Her eyes, however, followed Raphael, who seemed abnormally agitated. Hours later, with the crisis contained and the malicious code neutralized, most of the team had already left. Only Lucy, Felicity, and Richard remained in the room, reviewing the reinforced security protocols. I believe we are safe now, Richard concluded, rubbing his tired eyes. But we still need to find out who did this. The most worrying thing is that it was clearly internal sabotage, Felicity pondered. Someone who wants to see the project fail. Lucy, who had been unusually silent, finally spoke. I can investigate this. The two adults looked at her with surprise. What do you mean? Felicity asked. I understand how the system works now. I can trace who made these modifications, even if they tried to hide it. Richard hesitated. Lucy, this could be dangerous. If someone is deliberately sabotaging the project... I'm used to protecting myself, the girl interrupted with disturbing maturity, and no one would suspect me. Felicity and Richard exchanged worried glances. We cannot place that responsibility on you, Felicity said firmly. I've already activated our information security team. Lucy shrugged. a gesture that had become her trademark when she silently disagreed. All right. Later, in the apartment where she was staying with Maria, Lucy waited until her guardian fell asleep. Silently, she opened her laptop, a gift from Neotech, and connected remotely to the company's system using the credentials they had provided her. If no one's going to look in the right places, I'll have to do it myself, she murmured to herself as her fingers began to dance across the keyboard. The code on the screen reflected in her determined eyes. The night would be long, but Lucy was used to staying up all night, and this time she had an important mystery to solve. The digital clock read 3:42 a.m. when Lucy finally found what she was looking for. Sitting in the small improvised office in her room, surrounded only by the bluish light of the computer screen, the girl meticulously analyzed access logs and system modification records. "I understand the trick," she whispered to herself, a small smile of satisfaction forming on her lips. The saboteur had been careful, using a series of techniques to conceal their tracks, altered timestamps, ghost logins, indirect routes. To less trained eyes, it would be impossible to identify a pattern. But Lucy didn't just see isolated data, she saw connections, logical sequences, mathematical incongruities. After security backups and detailed documentation of her discoveries, the girl finally lay down, sleeping only a few hours before Maria woke her for breakfast. "You look tired," the social worker observed, placing a bowl of yogurt with fruit in front of the girl. "Were you up late studying again?" Lucy nodded vaguely, avoiding elaboration. She trusted Maria, but she had learned early on that the fewer people knew about her plans, the safer she would be. "I have an important meeting today," she replied simply. Arriving at Neotech, Lucy went directly to Felicity's office, ignoring the usual protocols. The secretary tried to stop her, but the CEO, seeing the determination on the girl's face through the glass door, waved for them to let her in. "Felicity, we need to talk," Lucy said, closing the door behind her. "In private." Realizing the seriousness of the situation, Felicity asked not to be interrupted and offered the young girl a chair. "What did you discover, Lucy?" The girl connected a flash drive to Felicity's computer and opened a series of files. "I identified who tried to sabotage Project Antares," she said directly. "It was Raphael." Felicity leaned back in her chair, her expression oscillating between shock and disbelief. "Raphael? Are you sure? He's one of the most respected professionals in the field. He's been with us for years." "The data doesn't lie," Lucy replied, opening graphs and logs. "He used administrative credentials at unusual times, disguised modifications as routine updates, and implemented destructive code that would only activate during the presentation." As Lucy explained her technical findings, Felicity's expression hardened. The evidence was irrefutable. "But why?" she finally asked. "What would be the motive?" Lucy opened another file, showing screenshots of emails and encrypted messages she had managed to decipher. "He's been working with quantum mines for at least 6 months, she explained, referring to Neotech's main competitor in the AI market. The messages show significant financial transfers and promises of a management position after Antares' failure. Felicity ran her hands over her face, processing the betrayal. "How did you gain access to this information?" she asked, finally realizing the extent of Lucy's nocturnal investigation. The girl hesitated briefly. "I prefer not to detail my methods," she replied diplomatically. "But I assure you that everything has been documented so that it can be verified by your security team." Felicity studied Lucy for a moment, torn between admiration for her competence and concern about her methods. Finally, she picked up the phone. "Richard, come to my office immediately and bring the head of security." Half an hour later, a small emergency meeting had been formed. In addition to Felicity and Lucy, Richard, Julian Adams, Director of Security, and Deborah were present. "The evidence is conclusive," Julian confirmed after reviewing the documentation presented by Lucy. "Raphael not only sabotaged the system, but has been in regular communication with Quantum Mines executives for months." "We need to act immediately," Richard decided. "Today is the last day of development before the investor presentation. If he realizes he's been discovered, he'll try something more drastic," Lucy completed. "I've already thought of that. That's why I implemented some safeguards last night." The adults looked at her with expressions that mixed surprise and concern. "What kind of safeguards?" Deborah asked. A detection system that monitors any attempt to modify critical modules, Lucy explained, and redundant backups that only I and now you know about. Felicity studied the young girl with increasing intensity. Lucy, this goes beyond your responsibilities as a consultant. You put yourself in a potentially dangerous position. The girl gave her characteristic shrug. When you live on the streets, you learn to identify threats before they materialize, she replied simply. Raphael never accepted my contributions. Now I understand why. My solution ruined his plans. What should we do? Richard asked, turning to Felicity. After a few moments of reflection, the CEO made her decision. We're going to confront him now, with the evidence in hand. Julian, prepare the security team. Richard, make sure all of Raphael's accesses have been revoked. Deborah, do a complete check on all the code he's touched in recent weeks. Lucy watched the activity with a neutral expression that disguised her internal anxiety. Direct confrontations always made her uncomfortable, a reflection of years of avoiding conflicts that could result in physical aggression. Raphael was in his office when the group entered. He looked up from his computer, surprised by the unusual entourage. Did something happen? He asked, adjusting his glasses. It did, Raphael, Felicity replied, her tone icy. We discovered the sabotage in Project Antares. The specialist maintained his composure, although a slight furrowing of his brows betrayed him. That's good. Have you identified the culprit? Yes, Felicity gestured, and Julian placed a folder on the table. You. Raphael laughed, a forced sound that didn't reach his eyes. That's absurd. Why would I sabotage a project I've been leading for 2 years? For money and a promise of a position at Quantum Mines, Richard replied, opening the folder and showing the evidence compiled by Lucy. Color drained from Raphael's face. His eyes quickly scanned the documents, pausing at the screenshots of conversations he believed were protected by advanced encryption. This is fabrication, he tried, his voice losing conviction. Someone is framing me. His gaze then found Lucy, who remained partially hidden behind Richard. Comprehension and fury crossed his face. It was you, he accused, pointing at the girl. Somehow, you forged all of this. Lucy stepped forward, holding his gaze with a calm that masked her racing heart. The timestamps of your nighttime accesses exactly match the times of the messages to Quantum Mines, she explained technically. The digital signature of the malicious code matches your programming pattern. The traces are there for anyone who knows where to look. Raphael paled even further. For a fleeting moment, it seemed he would continue denying, but then his shoulders slumped. You don't understand, he said, running his hands over his face. The project was doomed to fail before she appeared, he pointed at Lucy. We worked for 2 years with no concrete results. Quantum Mines offered a way out. A way out? Felicity repeated, incredulous. You call betrayal a way out? I call it professional survival, Raphael retorted, regaining some of his composure. And when this child appeared out of nowhere and solved problems that global specialists couldn't, no one questioned it? No one thought it was strange. It was obvious it would never work long term. But it did work, Deborah intervened. The tests proved it. Controlled tests, Raphael exclaimed. In a real environment with real data, the system would be exposed as the fraud it is. So you tried to ensure its failure, Richard concluded, his voice heavy with disappointment. Raphael didn't respond directly, but his gaze at Lucy contained so much resentment that the girl instinctively took a step back. You shouldn't even be here, he murmured. A street kid with no credentials, no formal education, nothing but intuition and luck. Enough, Felicity cut in. Raphael Carter, you are officially terminated from Neotech America. Julian will escort you to collect your personal belongings, and our legal department will be in touch to discuss the legal implications of your actions. You'll regret this, Raphael threatened as he was led out, when you realize you've gambled the company's future on the ideas of a street girl. The door closed, cutting off his words. A heavy silence hung in the room for a few moments. I'm sorry you witnessed that, Lucy, Felicity said finally, but I want you to know that your value here is not in question. The girl nodded, but her eyes revealed that Raphael's words had touched deep insecurities. What if he's right? She asked softly. What if in a real environment the system doesn't work as predicted? Deborah approached, gently placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. "Then we'll solve it together," she assured. "As a team, because that's what we are now." Back in the main development room, the news of Raphael's betrayal and dismissal was already circulating. The team worked with renewed urgency, checking and reinforcing every aspect of the system. "We have less than 24 hours until the presentation," Richard reminded them. "We need to ensure everything is working perfectly." Lucy looked around at the people who had gone from strangers to colleagues in just a few weeks. For the first time since she fled the orphanage, she felt part of something. "It will work," she affirmed with a conviction that surprised herself. As the team delved into the final preparations, Lucy observed Felicity talking in a low voice with Richard in a distant corner. Something in the CEO's determined expression told her that the next day's presentation would be more than just a technological demonstration. It would be a decisive moment for all of them. The morning of the presentation arrived with New York City's sky exceptionally clear after days of rain. In the temporary apartment, Lucy sat on the edge of the bed, contemplating the new clothes Maria had bought for her. Well-cut jeans, a light blue dress shirt, and a pair of impeccable white sneakers. "Nervous?" Maria asked, entering the room with a breakfast tray. "I don't know," Lucy replied honestly. "I've never been to anything like this before." "Felicity told me about your safeguards in the system," Maria commented, sitting beside her. "It was very brave and intelligent of you, but also risky." Lucy shrugged, picking up a piece of toast. "I was protecting the project." "You were protecting all of you," Maria gently corrected. "That's what we do when we start to care about people." The observation made Lucy pause. She had never thought of it that way. On the streets, taking care of herself was always the absolute priority. Forming bonds meant vulnerability. But now she realized she cared deeply about what was happening at Neotech, not just the project, but the people. "Do you think it will work?" she asked, a rare display of insecurity. Maria smiled. "I believe so. But even if it doesn't, you've already achieved something extraordinary." "What?" "A fresh start. A chance to build a different future." Lucy nodded silently, processing those words as she finished her breakfast. Upon arriving at Neotech, the building was already buzzing with activity. The main auditorium had been prepared for the demonstration, with representatives from investment funds, technology executives, and even some specialized journalists. Backstage, the team made final adjustments. Deborah tested the system connections, while Richard reviewed the presentation with Felicity. "Lucy, good you're here," Richard greeted her as he saw her. "We're about to do the final system test." The girl approached the control station, her eyes quickly scanning the monitors. All indicators were green, a good sign. "We can start the test in a simulated environment," she suggested. For the next 15 minutes, the team watched in silence as the Antares system processed a complex set of data, performing predictive analysis, pattern recognition, and autonomous decision-making, all with impressive efficiency. 98.2% accuracy, Deborah announced when the test ended. Latency reduced by 73% compared to the previous version. Energy performance optimized by 84%. A collective sigh of relief swept through the room. "We're going to make it," Richard affirmed, his face lighting up with a genuine smile. While the team celebrated discreetly, Felicity approached Lucy. "Can I speak with you privately?" she asked, guiding the girl to an adjacent room. Once seated, Felicity was direct. "I want to make a proposal, Lucy. Something I've been thinking about since you helped us with Antares." The girl waited, curious. "You transformed not only our project, but our way of thinking," Felicity continued. "And that made me wonder, how many other brilliant minds are out there, invisible to the system, without the opportunity to develop their potential?" Lucy's eyes narrowed slightly, trying to understand where the conversation was going. "I'm proposing to create a permanent program at Neotech," Felicity explained. "A program to identify and develop exceptional talents from unconventional backgrounds, young people from the streets, from shelters, from underserved communities. People who, like you, have extraordinary potential but no open doors." Lucy blinked, genuinely surprised. "A social program." "Social and strategic," Felicity corrected. "Cognitive diversity is an invaluable asset for innovation. Identifying minds that think differently, that solve problems in unorthodox ways, is not only a social responsibility, but a competitive advantage." The girl considered the idea for a few moments. How would it work? Partnerships with public libraries, community centers, shelters. Tests that measure curiosity, creativity, and problem-solving, not formal knowledge. Personalized mentorship, adapted education, real development opportunities. It wouldn't just be charity, Lucy stated, more as an observation than a question. Exactly. It would be an investment, Felicity agreed, in human potential and in innovation. And what would be my role in this? Felicity smiled. I want you to help design it. Who better than you to understand what young people in similar situations need? You would be our special consultant while continuing your studies and development here. Lucy remained silent, processing the proposal. It was more than she ever expected, more than she believed she deserved. It wasn't just about her. It was about creating opportunities for others like her. Why are you doing this? She finally asked, her voice almost a whisper. Felicity hesitated, carefully choosing her words. Because I believe the greatest waste in the world is unrealized human potential, she replied sincerely. And because you showed me that our assumptions about who can contribute to innovation were deeply limited. Before Lucy could respond, Richard opened the door. Sorry to interrupt, but the investors are arriving. We need to prepare. Felicity stood up. Think about the proposal. We'll talk more after the presentation. Lucy nodded, following them back to the auditorium. Her mind buzzed with the possibilities that had just been opened before her. The auditorium was almost full when the presentation began. Felicity took the stage with the characteristic confidence of someone leading one of the largest technology companies in the United States. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago, Neotech America embarked on an ambitious journey to develop an adaptive artificial intelligence system that could revolutionize how we process and analyze complex information, she began. The path was more challenging than we anticipated. We faced technical obstacles that seemed insurmountable. We saw deadlines extended and resources consumed. In the audience, Lucy watched intently, sitting between Maria and Deborah. She noticed Quantum Minds executives in the front rows, their faces impassive as they listened. A few weeks ago, we were on the verge of failure, Felicity continued, her honesty surprising the audience. And then, something extraordinary happened, an intervention that not only saved the project but elevated it to a level we never imagined possible. With a gesture, Felicity called Richard to the stage. The CTO took the microphone. What we are going to demonstrate today is not just an incremental improvement, he explained. It is a complete reformulation of how AI systems can learn, adapt, and evolve. In the following minutes, Richard conducted a live demonstration of the Antares system, processing data in real time, responding to challenges posed by the audience, and showing performance metrics that made investors exchange impressed glances. As you can see, the efficiency is incomparable to any similar system on the market, Richard concluded. But the true revolution lies in the underlying architecture, which allows for adaptability in highly dynamic environments. Felicity returned to the center of the stage. You must be wondering how we achieved this dramatic turnaround, she said, pausing strategically. The answer challenges our most basic assumptions about innovation and talent. With a gesture, she invited Lucy to join them on stage. The girl hesitated briefly before standing up, feeling dozens of curious glances following her path to the center of the auditorium. This is Lucy Oliver, Felicity introduced, gently placing a hand on her shoulder, a self-taught young mathematician who found an elegant solution to problems that had challenged our team of specialists for months. A murmur ran through the audience. Lucy felt the weight of their gazes intensify, a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. Lucy did not come from a prestigious university. She holds no diplomas or certifications, Felicity continued. She learned advanced mathematics, calculus, and neural network theory on her own in public libraries while living in a vulnerable situation. The silence was now absolute. The Quantum Minds executives seemed particularly uncomfortable. I would like Lucy to explain, in her own words, the approach that revolutionized our project. With the microphone in her hands, Lucy took a deep breath. She had never spoken to so many people before. For an instant, fear paralyzed her. Then her eyes met Maria's in the audience, who nodded encouragingly. Beside her, Deborah smiled confidently, These were people who believed in her. "The solution is simple, really," Lucy began, her voice small but clear. "When you don't know something is supposedly impossible, you just do it." A small laugh ran through the audience, breaking the tension. "I saw patterns where others saw only noise," she continued, gaining confidence. "I realized that the model was trying to process information linearly in an inherently multidimensional problem. So I redesigned the architecture to reflect that reality." As Lucy explained the technical aspects of her solution, using simple analogies for complex concepts, the faces in the audience showed growing admiration. Even those who did not understand all the technical nuances could appreciate the clarity and elegance of her reasoning. "But the most important thing I learned," she concluded, "is that innovative solutions often come from different perspectives, from people no one would expect to contribute." Handing the microphone back to Felicity, Lucy took a step back, feeling a strange mixture of relief and accomplishment. Felicity smiled, turning to the audience. "And that brings us to the second part of our announcement today," she said. "Inspired by Lucy's extraordinary journey, we are launching a new initiative, the New Horizons program." In the following minutes, Felicity detailed the proposal she had shared with Lucy, explaining how Neotech planned to identify and develop exceptional talents in vulnerable communities. She spoke about cognitive diversity as a driver of innovation, about corporate social responsibility with measurable strategic returns. "We are looking for partners for this initiative," she concluded. "Investors who see not only the technological potential of Project Antares, but the human potential that can be unlocked through the New Horizons program." When the presentation ended, the response was immediate. Investors lined up to talk to Felicity. Journalists surrounded Richard with questions about the technical aspects, and to her surprise, Lucy found herself equally in demand. "Impressive, truly impressive," commented a grey-haired investor approaching her. "Samuel Thompson, Vanguard Fund. What are your plans now, young lady?" Before Lucy could respond, she felt a familiar presence beside her. "The immediate priority is to ensure Lucy's formal education adapted to her exceptional abilities." Maria intervened with professional firmness. "Any participation she has in future projects will be balanced with her academic and personal development." The investor nodded respectfully. Of course. I just wanted to express my enthusiasm for her potential. We will be following her trajectory with great interest." When they finally found a moment of privacy, Lucy turned to Felicity. "The investors seem to like the idea of the program," she commented. "More than that," Felicity confirmed with a radiant smile. "We already have preliminary commitments that cover the budget for the next 3 years. New Horizons is officially a reality." "And my answer is yes," Lucy said simply. "I want to help build this." Felicity nodded, her eyes shining. "I knew you'd say that. And now we have a lot of work ahead of us." Across the auditorium, the Quantum Minds executives discreetly withdrew, their tense faces revealing the failure of their plans. Project Antares had not only survived, it had triumphed spectacularly, and was now poised to transform much more than just the technology market. The following months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The New Horizons program went from paper to tangible reality, with a speed that surprised even the most optimistic at Neotech. The program's first center was established in a renovated old warehouse on the outskirts of New York City, in the neighborhood of Harlem. The space, large and bright after the renovation, had been equipped with technology labs, creative studios, adaptable classrooms, and welcoming common areas. "I still can't believe we managed to do all this in just 4 months, Maria, now the program's official coordinator, commented as she walked through the space with Lucy. The girl, who had recently turned 13, observed everything with a mixture of pride and fascination. Her simple but well-maintained clothes and more confident posture revealed the changes in her life. "It's exactly as we imagined," she replied, approaching one of the workstations. "Did the computers arrive yesterday?" "Yes, and they're all configured with the software you recommended," Maria confirmed. "The high-speed internet is also working perfectly." A noise at the entrance drew their attention. Felicity entered accompanied by a small group of people, including Richard and representatives from the Municipal Department of Education. "And here is our brilliant mind," Felicity introduced upon seeing Lucy, "the inspiration behind the entire New Horizons concept." Lucy still felt uncomfortable with compliments, but she had learned to accept them with a shy smile. The credit goes to the entire team, she responded diplomatically, especially Maria, who transformed abstract ideas into a structured program. Teamwork, Maria agreed, something we've all learned to value. As the group continued the visit through the facilities, Lucy reflected on the transformations in her own life. After the successful presentation of Project Antares, Maria had obtained temporary guardianship of the girl, finally providing her with a stable home. Her formal education had resumed through a personalized program, combining private lessons, university-level online courses, and specific mentorship in her areas of interest. "The first participants arrive next week, don't they?" asked one of the department representatives. "Exactly," Maria confirmed. 20 young people between 12 and 17 selected through our pilot process. "And how was this selection?" another visitor inquired. Richard stepped forward to answer. "We worked with social workers, educators, and psychologists to identify young people with extraordinary potential who, due to socio-economic circumstances, do not have access to adequate development opportunities. We don't just look for mathematical or technological skills," Lucy added. "We seek diverse talents, visual arts, music, language, creative problem-solving. The important thing is the ability to think differently," Felicity concluded, "to see possibilities where others see obstacles." At the end of the visit, the department representatives were visibly impressed. "City Hall has great interest in expanding this partnership," the assistant secretary commented before leaving. "We will closely monitor the results of this first cycle." When the group finally departed, Felicity, Richard, Maria, and Lucy gathered in the central area of the center. "Are we really ready to begin?" Richard asked, his expression revealing a mixture of enthusiasm and apprehension. "We'll never be completely ready," Maria replied with a serene smile. "But that's part of the beauty of the process. We'll learn and adapt as we go." "Exactly like a good learning algorithm," Lucy joked, eliciting laughter from the group. The following week, the New Horizons Center came alive with the arrival of its first participants. Each young person had a unique story, marked by challenges and resilience. There was Paul, a 16-year-old who transformed electronic scrap into impressive kinetic sculptures. Camilla, 14, who had developed a rudimentary water purification system using recyclable materials. Matthew, 15, a self-taught programmer who had created applications to help his community. "They remind me of you," Felicity commented to Lucy, observing the young people exploring the space with wide-eyed wonder. "The same sparkle in their eyes." "The difference is that they won't have to do it alone," Lucy replied, a note of emotion in her usually controlled voice. The program was structured into personalized tracks, respecting each participant's specific interests and abilities. Mornings were dedicated to adaptive formal education, ensuring everyone could keep up with or advance in the school curriculum. Afternoons focused on practical projects, mentorships, and technical development in areas of interest. Lucy divided her time between her own advanced studies and mentoring sessions, with some of the participants most inclined to mathematics and computer science. To her surprise, she found that teaching was a deeply gratifying experience. "You have a gift for explaining complex concepts in an accessible way," Richard observed after watching one of her sessions. "I've never seen anyone explain machine learning algorithms with such clarity to beginners. Perhaps because I still remember what it was like not to understand," Lucy replied thoughtfully. "When you learn on your own, you have to build bridges between the known and the unknown." In parallel with the pilot center's operation, Project Antares continued its successful trajectory at Neotech. The commercial implementation of the system had attracted important clients, from financial institutions to healthcare organizations, all interested in its unprecedented adaptive capability. "Third quarter results exceeded all expectations," Felicity announced during a strategic meeting. "Return on investment has already surpassed our projections for the entire year." "And the most impressive thing is the diversity of applications," Richard added. "The architecture Lucy developed has proven to be remarkably versatile." The girl, who participated in strategic meetings as a special consultant, received this news with discreet satisfaction. For her, the true impact of her work was in the social program it had inspired. 6 months after the program began, the preliminary results were already extraordinary. Paul had developed an alternative energy system that combined principles of kinetic art with sustainable engineering. Camilla had perfected her water purifier, achieving efficiency levels that caught the attention of social technology specialists. Matthew had led a team that created a digital platform to connect small local producers to neighborhood consumers. "Their rate of progress is impressive," Maria commented during a quarterly evaluation, "but I'm not surprised. When you offer adequate tools and a supportive environment for natural talents, development is exponential." External recognition was not long in coming. Reports in newspapers and specialized magazines began to highlight the innovative initiative. A special feature in the country's largest business magazine carried the headline, "From Invisibility to Innovation: How a Child Prodigy and a Visionary Executive are Transforming the Future of American Technology." The impact on Lucy's personal life was also remarkable. With Maria's legal guardianship now official, she finally had a permanent home. Her own room, a stable routine, regular meals, simple privileges she never took for granted. Her nightmares about her time in the orphanage and on the streets gradually became less frequent. "You're taller," Maria observed one morning, measuring Lucy against the mark on the kitchen wall. "Almost 3 centimeters in 4 months. Must be all this food you make me eat," Lucy joked, but the smile on her face revealed deep gratitude. As the program gained visibility, new opportunities arose. Representatives from other American cities began to make contact, interested in replicating the model. International foundations offered partnerships and additional funding. "We need to think about expansion strategically," Felicity pondered during a steering committee meeting. "Growing too quickly can compromise quality." "I agree," Lucy said. "The human element is essential. Each center needs to maintain a personalized approach." "What do you suggest then?" Richard asked. "Meticulously document our methodology. Train coordinators with extreme care. Expand gradually, one center at a time, ensuring that each one maintains the essence of the original program." The suggestion was unanimously accepted. In the following months, a second center was established in Miami, Florida, followed by a third in New Orleans, Louisiana. Each unit adapted to the cultural characteristics and specific needs of its region, while maintaining the fundamental principles of the program. On a particularly significant afternoon, Lucy was informed that she had been nominated for a prestigious International Social Innovation Award. The award committee highlighted not only her technical contributions to Project Antares, but primarily her role in the conception of the New Horizons program. "You deserve this recognition," Felicity affirmed when she gave her the news. "You are changing lives, Lucy." The girl remained silent for a few moments, processing the information. "I didn't do it alone," she finally replied. "No, you didn't. But you lit the spark," Felicity smiled. "Sometimes that's all we need to start a transformation." That night in her room, Lucy contemplated a mural she had started to put together on one of the walls. On it, letters and messages from program participants formed a colorful mosaic of gratitude and hope. They were tangible reminders that purpose went far beyond awards or public recognition. "True success is not in trophies," she murmured to herself, echoing something Maria frequently said. "It's in the lives we touch." With that thought, she turned her attention to the notebook on her lap, where she was sketching ideas for the next big challenge, taking the New Horizons program beyond the borders of the United States. 2 years had passed since that rainy night when a hungry girl entered a corporate building in search of food and ended up revolutionizing an artificial intelligence project. Time, as always, brought changes, some subtle, others profound. On a sunny October afternoon, Lucy, now 14 and a few inches taller, walked across the campus of MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, accompanied by a computational physics professor. Her curly hair, once disheveled, was now well-groomed, tied in a practical ponytail. She wore jeans, sneakers, and a T-shirt with the New Horizons program logo. "Your ideas about quantum computing applied to AI are fascinating, Lucy," the professor commented, "especially for someone so young." "I'm still learning, Professor Davies," she replied with the modesty that had become her trademark, despite her extraordinary achievements. "There's a lot I don't fully understand." "That's science, my dear. No one fully understands," the academic smiled. "The important thing is to keep asking the right questions." That visit to MIT was part of Lucy's new routine. After completing elementary and middle school in record time through an accelerated program, she now divided her time between advanced studies at different academic institutions and her role as ambassador and consultant for the New Horizons program. Back in New York City in the late afternoon, Lucy went directly to the program's central headquarters, which now occupied an entire building in the vibrant neighborhood of Chinatown. The place buzzed with activity. Dozens of young people in different spaces, working on projects, participating in mentorships, or simply chatting animatedly in the common areas. Maria, who oversaw the program's national operation while maintaining her role as Lucy's legal guardian, greeted her at the entrance. "How was MIT?" she asked, accompanying her down the main corridor. "Productive," Lucy replied. "Professor Davies believes we can publish a joint paper on my theoretical model by the end of the year." "Another publication for your collection," Maria smiled. "By the way, Felicity is waiting for us in the video conference room. The call with UNESCO starts in 15 minutes. Any news about international expansion?" "Several, actually, but I'll let her tell you herself." The expansion of the New Horizons program had been meteoric. What began as a pilot initiative in New York City now boasted 17 centers across the United States, serving over 1,200 young people from vulnerable communities. The results far exceeded the most optimistic expectations: accelerated academic development rates, numerous social impact projects developed by participants, international recognition as an innovative model for inclusive education. In the video conference room, Felicity waited. Neotech's CEO looked tired but radiant. The past 2 years had been intense for her too, balancing the growing demand for the Antares system, now in its 5th, increasingly sophisticated version, and the expansion of the social program that had become the company's pride and joy. "Ah, you arrived just in time," she greeted them. "We have big news." Before she could elaborate, the call began. On the screen, representatives from UNESCO, the World Bank, and educational foundations from various countries awaited. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today," Felicity began. "As agreed in our last meeting, I would like to present the preliminary results of our pilot initiative in Canada and Mexico." Over the next 40 minutes, impressive data was shared. The 2 international New Horizons program centers, established 6 months earlier, already showed success indicators comparable to the more mature American centers. Methodological adaptation for different cultural contexts was a challenge, but the fundamental principles proved to be universally effective, Maria explained. The key remains identifying unconventional potentials and providing personalized development environments. And the direct participation of young people in the program's governance has been crucial, Lucy added. They understand the specific needs of each community better than anyone. One of the World Bank representatives took the floor. "Based on these preliminary results, we are ready to approve funding for the next phase of expansion. 10 new centers distributed across North America, Africa, and Southeast Asia." The announcement was met with contained enthusiasm. It was a gigantic step for the program, but everyone there understood the magnitude of the responsibility that came with it. "We want to ensure that the expansion maintains the quality and essential values of the program," Felicity emphasized. "Growth for growth's sake has never been our objective." "Precisely why we trust in your ability to lead this expansion," the UNESCO representative responded. "The governance model you've developed, combining methodological rigor with contextual adaptability, is exactly what we seek in global initiatives." After the call concluded, Felicity, Maria, and Lucy remained in the room, processing the significance of that approval. 10 new international centers, Maria reflected, when I think we started with 20 young people in a renovated warehouse. The potential impact is, Felicity searched for words, exponential, Lucy completed, a small smile on her lips. "As a good algorithm should be." The 3 laughed, sharing that moment of collective achievement. "Speaking of algorithms," Felicity said, subtly changing the subject, "Richard sent me the latest data from Antares 5.0. The system is surpassing all previous metrics." "That was expected," Lucy replied. "The optimizations in the parallel processing architecture we implemented last quarter should provide an efficiency gain of at least 22%. Actually, we're seeing 27%, Felicity corrected with a smile. You continue to underestimate your own creations. Lucy shrugged, her characteristic gesture now accompanied by a discreet smile. How is Paul? She asked, referring to one of the program's first participants. I heard he was accepted into MIT. Yes, with a full scholarship, Maria confirmed with evident pride. His renewable energy project impressed even the most skeptical evaluators. And Camilla is in Switzerland, presenting her improved purifier at an international water technologies conference, Felicity added. I just received photos. She's rocking it there. Lucy smiled, genuinely happy with the success of her peers. In the early months of the program, she had struggled against an irrational feeling of competition, a remnant of her years of solitary survival. Gradually, she learned to celebrate the achievements of others as collective victories. I think we should celebrate, Maria suggested. Both today's good news and your birthday tomorrow. We don't need anything special, Lucy protested, still uncomfortable with celebrations centered on her. It's not a matter of needing, Felicity gently countered. It's a matter of deserving. The next night, the New Horizons headquarters terrace was decorated with soft lights and elegantly arranged tables. A small celebration had been organized, bringing together people who had been part of the extraordinary journey of the past 2 years. The original Project Antares team, the coordinators of the program's various centers, volunteer mentors, some of the young participants who had become close friends with Lucy. Richard, now Neotech's Director of Innovation, raised his glass in a toast. To a young woman who taught us that true human potential knows no barriers of origin, diploma, or circumstance, who showed us that sometimes the brightest minds are in the most improbable places. To Lucy Oliver, who turned 15 today, and to all the future Lucys that the New Horizons program will continue to discover and support. Warm applause followed the toast. Lucy, wearing a simple but elegant blue dress chosen by Maria for the occasion, smiled shyly, still not entirely comfortable as the center of attention. Later, as guests chatted in small groups, Lucy slipped away to a quieter corner of the terrace. Leaning on the balustrade, she contemplated the illuminated city below. New York City, the metropolis that had almost swallowed her during her days on the streets, now looked different in her eyes, no longer a threatening predator, but a universe of possibilities. Felicity joined her, respecting her moment of introspection with an initial silence. Thinking about what? She finally asked. About patterns, Lucy replied, her eyes still on the city lights. On the streets, I learned to see patterns where others saw only chaos. That's what kept me alive. Now I realize it's also what allows me to see solutions where others see only problems. Felicity nodded, understanding the depth of that reflection. Your life has changed a lot in these 2 years. Many people's lives have changed, Lucy corrected. That's what really matters. A comfortable silence settled between them. In the distance, Maria's laughter stood out amidst the animated conversations. What do you see in the future, Lucy? Felicity finally asked. For you, for the program? The young girl contemplated the question for a few moments. I see more centers in more countries. I see thousands of young people discovering their potential, developing solutions for problems we don't even know about yet. I see a global network of innovators who think differently. And for you? Lucy smiled, a serene smile that reflected her journey of personal growth. To keep learning, to keep solving problems, to keep helping open doors for others like me. Admirable goals, Felicity commented. They're the only ones that make sense, Lucy replied simply. When you get a second chance at life, you have a responsibility to do something meaningful with it. The next day, while reviewing reports from the international centers in her office at the program headquarters, Lucy found an envelope someone had left on her desk. Inside, there was a recent report about the New Horizons program, published in a prestigious international newspaper. The title read, The Silent Revolution: How a Brazilian Child is Redefining Opportunity and Global Innovation. The subtitle completed, It all began when a hungry girl entered a corporate building in search of food and left having solved a problem that experts had been struggling with for months. Lucy smiled as she read, not out of vanity, but for the accuracy of the narrative. Indeed, it all began with hunger. Hunger for food, yes, but also hunger for knowledge, for opportunity, for a different future. The last sentence of the report had been highlighted by whoever left the envelope. Perhaps true innovation lies not in the technologies we create, but in who we allow to create them. From her window, Lucy could see the center's courtyard, where dozens of young people from different backgrounds, ages, and life stories shared ideas, challenges, and dreams. Each of them carried extraordinary potential that, until recently, would have been wasted. Potential has no zip code, surname, or prior diploma, she murmured to herself, repeating what had become the program's unofficial motto. Her computer emitted an alert. It was time for the video conference with the coordinators of the new international centers. Adjusting her posture, Lucy prepared for another day of building the future. Not just her own, but that of all those who, like her, deserved the chance to turn their extraordinary minds into tools for positive change. On her computer screen, diverse faces from different continents began to appear. Young coordinators, many of them former program participants, now leading their own units. It was living proof that the virtuous cycle had begun. "Welcome to our first global planning meeting," Lucy began with quiet confidence. "We have a lot of work ahead of us, but also a proven model and a shared vision." As she led the meeting, the girl who once had nothing but her extraordinary intellect now led a silent revolution that transcended borders, proving that sometimes the most powerful seeds of the future are planted in the most improbable places. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Lucy Oliver's journey has touched your hearts and inspired your minds. To continue exploring equally captivating American stories, we have prepared a special playlist that can be accessed by clicking the icon to the left of the screen. If this narrative awakens something in you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give that valuable like to the video. Daily, we bring unique stories that celebrate human potential in all its forms. Share in the comments what moment in Lucy's journey resonated most with you. What other American stories of overcoming adversity would you like to hear? We look forward to reading your impressions. Until our next encounter.